I'd like to call to order the Tuesday, October 5th and 6th, 2021 Finance Committee meeting. And it's 6:03 p.m. First item on the agenda, public appearances, non-agenda items. Do we have anybody on Zoom? And we do not have anybody in chambers. So we'll move on to the first item on our list, department presentations, 2022 budget presentation schedule. First item, budget document logistics. Misty Dodge, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Randy. Welcome, everybody. 2022 budget process, the information gathering stage kicks off tonight. So first, I'm going to talk just about some logistics and mechanics before we turn it over to the mayor to talk about, what is or is not included in the budget. First, for those of you that are watching, the budget is available on the city's website. So if you go to the Fitchburg page, government, and then under departments, finance, and then there is the financial report, records and reports over on the left, and the mayor's proposed budget is right here on the top. So you can get it from the website. There's also the link available in the packet, and it was also available in the news flash that we sent out. When you're looking at the document, the easiest way, I think, to navigate is using the bookmarks, which is over here on the left, at least in my version of PDF software. And you can see it's split out by each one of the departments and all the different sections. So the blue items, the blue font ones are kind of the touch points that I think you'll be interested in. So the mayor's letter, where all of the numbers start, and then each one of the departments is listed in blue. The new proposals, the summary is here, listed in red. If you wanted to know whether or not a new staffing proposal was included, you could look in this orange column here of the mayor's budget. You can see if there's numbers in it, it means it was included. If they are zeros, it means it was not included. You could also go to the individual new proposals, and you'll see they are also bookmarked in red font to bring them out. And then at the top of it, I tried to include whether it was or was not included in the mayor's budget in the top right corner of that new proposal. When we're talking about the budget, so levy limits and expenditure restraint are two things that we always focus on. Expenditure restraint has a lot of question marks still at this point. I'm still working with the Department of Revenue to figure out what it means with the town of Madison absorption and what kind of an adjustment we're going to be able to get. My hope is that that will work itself out, but I will put through an amendment during the council amendment time to make sure that our budget, if it can, meets the requirements of that program and at least uses the capacity that's available if we are under. So that's the same approach we've kind of done in other years. So we'll do it again. It's just a little bit more uncertainty because of the town. And then if you think about levy limit calculation, so that is here on page 17. Down at the bottom, as is, the levy limit, or we are over the levy limit about $770,000. That's this orange number here. But this is where we'll use that strategy I've talked about at the committee of the whole meeting to basically use the levy limit adjustment for the town of Madison absorption and TID 6 closure a year early. So that's what this green section is here. So between those two, I expect we'll get a total levy limit adjustment about $1.2 million. About $400,000 of it has already been spent in the CIP. So that leaves $785,000 of that future adjustment for operating purposes. And so then if you compare the orange and this bottom green number, that's where we have about $12,000 left in levy limit capacity when we use that strategy. There are some pending items. So the 2021 debt issuance, you guys authorized the start of that, but not the final. So that will be an omnibus amendment when it comes to that point. And then all of the assessed values are estimates at this point. Board of Review has closed, but the Department of Revenue hasn't equated the manufacturing values yet. So I have my best guess in there, but a lot of those numbers will be slightly different. So if you're talking about, taxes on the average home, assessed value tax rate, all of these things that are purple in the summaries, those are based on my estimates of what that assessed value is going to end up being. So the focus of tonight's presentations, you have about half of the department heads here today to share with you what their budget request was. They will focus on the executive summary page at the last section is significant changes. So they will focus on that. Then they will talk about their new proposals and whether or not they were included in the mayor's budget so that you are aware. And then we'll open it up for any questions that you have. So again, this is the information gathering piece. I really encourage you to ask as many questions as you have so that you feel like you have a full grasp on what is and is not included in the budget. And with that, oh, and then of course, all the detail is available in the document. It's a large document, but we won't go line by line through all of those requests. We'll focus just on those significant changes.
Yes, go ahead, Julia.
So when is going to be the best time to ask questions to Misty about some of the strategy that she's going to use we can do it now or after, at the end of the night?
So either way, the finance section, my actual finance department budget is at the end of tonight too, so maybe wait till then to get some of the department heads through and then do it then.
Okay.
Perfect.
Gabriella, go ahead. You have the floor.
Thank you. I hope this will be quick. I just to clarify about the expenditure restraint program, the funds that are being used for the 2022 budget, those were the ones that we got for the previous year. And then if we qualify this year, those would be used in 2023. Do you know what I'm saying? We delay the use of the expenditure restraint funding. Is that correct?
Correct. So it's actually a 2-year delay really. So we qualify for it with the 2022 budget. We'll get the payment in 2023, and then we would apply it to our capital levy in 2024 to give ourselves some time if it doesn't work out. And if for whatever reason expenditure restraint isn't an option for us this year, I will want to do a strategy to make sure we set ourselves up for the future, I guess I'll say. So we'll put that in there as an amendment. But we do have 2 or 3 years worth of expenditure restraint revenue set aside in our fund balance in the capital projects fund. So while we clearly want to qualify for it if we can, I'd rather spend $650,000 of the state's money versus our taxpayers' money. But if we can't, it's not insurmountable, I guess, for our budget.
But those ERP funds are allocated in this budget from the ERP funds from a previous year?
Yes.
Is that, okay,
Exactly.
thank you.
That is all I had, Chair.
Okay, with that, I will turn it over to Mayor Aaron Richardson for an introduction.
All right, thank you, everyone. This is really the most important thing we do, I think, every year. You know, this really is a huge piece of why we're here and really dictates where the city goes going forward. And so I'm just going to highlight some of the stuff you can see in my cover letter. One is the commitment to taxpayers. This is budget as is right now, has a 3% increase. Would I like to be 0? Yeah, I would. But is that realistic, especially when we are finally now taking on the town of Madison? It's not, but I felt like 3% is at least a fair amount. So that's kind of where this budget is at right now. And, you know, talking about town of Madison, we've talked about this for really over 20 years. And finally, we're doing some things for that, because next October, they are coming to us. So there's a lot of positions in here that really is taking a brunt of that work. There's some more positions that we will need, but I was able to get more positions than expected. And I think one of the things that I was most excited about is we've talked in council meetings about needing to possibly do a bunch of structural deficits, which I know Misty hates, I hate, but we were actually able to do it without that. There is one structural deficit, and it's really actually a planned one because we are repairing our salt shed. And so we are not going to buy as much salt as we normally do because we don't want a bunch of salt in the shed when we fix it. So it makes a lot of sense that we would not buy as much salt as normal. But otherwise, for the positions, there aren't structural deficits, and that's huge. And that really helps us a lot next year. That was my big concern. If there were structural deficits, is that next year, it's really going to handcuff us if we do that. And it's going to be, you know, it's always going to be a tough year. Every year is a tough year. And this year is no different. Next year will be no different. You know, again, I think the commitment to employees in general with the 2%, cost of living adjustment that we've been doing in my entire time as council, mayor and on council before that. And also, just providing that support to most departments anyway. Road maintenance, our structure, really all our infrastructure is in need of some help, and the more that we can provide there, the better. Should do more than we do, frankly, but it is something that we are increasing the expenditures in there. And then another thing that I thought was really important is we've got a lot of growth right now, but those neighborhoods are going to fill up and sell out a lot quicker than you might think. And so we need to start thinking about the next neighborhoods. And so part of that is planning for South Stormwater Prairie and doing a neighborhood plan for that. And so we have some money in here for that. We are expecting some of the landowners to contribute about half of that money, but that's a key thing for us. If we want to continue growing, which we do, is to make sure that we've got neighborhoods that can come online and can keep providing not only housing, but also room for businesses as well. And South Stormwater Prairie, there's a lot of business over in that area. So I'm sure that there will be a mix of business and I don't know what types of business, but business and residential. Let's see, Missy talked a little bit about expenditure restraints, so I'm not gonna go on that anymore. One of the things that, as we close our TIDs, there is money in there that is kind of like a one-time thing that we get to use. And that's really great to utilize for certain projects. And one that I know we added in the CIP, but I want to use that money for is the McKee Farms Park tennis courts. Those are incredibly important, and we do need to resurface those. I agree. I just want to make sure that we use that money from the closure of TID 6. I think that provides us a little bit more flexibility. So it is something that I'm going to propose. Now, that will go through the process of everything else. And if everyone disagrees and they want to use that money for something else, when that happens, they'll have the opportunity. It's not like I just get to say we're going to spend it on this. That's never the case with our budget. As much as I would love that, that's not the case. But, that's one thing. Another thing is that we are more and more doing maintenance on our fleet internally, especially some of the routine maintenance. And it's really to the point where we have one kind of stall or workstation, if you will, but especially with the police cars that we're going to own now instead of lease, we really want to do a second one. And that also helps with not only if there's a lot that needs to be done, but just in case something happens to one of the bays, then we have the other one that we can utilize. So that's another one that will be coming up that I want to use those funds for. It really helps not only public works, but really all of our fleet of vehicles and the entire department. We've talked about not only police cars, but some of the fire vehicles and maybe even EMS vehicles, not to mention all the other vehicles that various departments have. Let's see, refuse and recycling. We've talked about that a little bit. Staffing, I talked about being able to have a lot more positions than I expected. And I really tried to have a lot of positions in there that not only are ones that departments can work together on, but it impacts lots of departments. One is a GIS position that is going to help like 4 or 5 at least departments to really make sure we're using GIS appropriately. There's also some GIS requirements that we're going to have to do going forward. And so that position will make sure that we're doing all of those things we need. Another position I'm really excited about is a partnership with the senior center and the police department where they're going to share a social worker. So we're going to add another social worker. And I think that's needed in our senior center, but that person is also going to be used in the police department as well, and really hopefully be able to provide a different method of service from the police department, maybe even some more proactive things, so that that's my just hope is that they're able to understand some of the issues and have that inside foot, I guess, with the police department so that they can hopefully deal with some issues so that people aren't relying on the police department to essentially be their social worker. We have a trained person. That's something that I think is also a really great thing. And then another position I'm really excited about is what we're calling a clerical float position. And that's a position that's going to be utilized with a lot of different departments. When we have the town of Madison coming, that adds so much strain on so many departments that if this position can help provide some service to all those, especially on their busy times, it's going to be, I think, not only a great opportunity to support those departments, but also a great opportunity for someone to come in, be exposed to a lot of different departments, and then someone who we hopefully love. And as other positions come open in clerks, assessing, wherever it might be, this person might be able to go into that role. If it's something that they really like and we love them, we're almost creating a feeder system to some of our other departments. And some departments struggle a little bit to find people. And so I just feel like that's a great opportunity to get people into maybe a lower level position, but also learn the city and help out with elections. I mean, that's a big thing, helping the clerks out. Maybe they're going to help with the business luncheon that business and economic development do. Maybe they can do some clerical stuff for maybe building inspection, assessing, zoning. You know, there's a lot of areas that I think can really use some help, especially with the town of Madison coming on. So I'm really excited about that. But, you know, there's a lot of other positions, whether, you know, a couple officers in the police department, a couple things in public works. And, you know, part of that is, as a council, we have said, we want a lot of stuff done in the next couple of years, you know, especially like around water and streets and all these things. Frankly, we've put too much on the plate of our current staff, and there's positions that, or there's projects that probably wouldn't get done with the current staffing levels. And so they are really important. I agree, those are important positions, but we do need more capacity. And so adding some more capacity. Now, I will, you know, understand that there are areas that we will need more people. You know, town of Madison is coming and it's putting a lot of stress on us. And there are areas where we still need more. Building inspection would be one that I think is going to need more. We're going to need probably more infrastructure and other departments as well. So we've taken a huge bite out of that need, a lot more than I expected, but there is still some more need next year that we are going to be looking to do. Talk a little about stormwater projects, and those are things that really every district has some stormwater issues. And so, you know, it's really important that we are continuing to make progress on those. That's something that before I was mayor, we never had any kind of plan, but now we do have a plan. We are making progress on those. Otherwise, I talked about structural deficits, talked a little bit about, I can talk about ARPA funding, ARPA funding. And that's another one where, you know, we're starting to understand what the restrictions are. When we really understand that whole thing, we're going to go through a process just like we do with this and with the CIP, where I'll work with staff and kind of come up with what I think might be the best use, but then we bring it forward to all of you and to the public for feedback and for changes. And so you might say, oh, I don't want this project, I want this project instead. And we can make those changes. That's no problem. And just like every other budget, because ultimately, you know, Misty says this all the time, this isn't my budget, this is our budget. And that's where, you know, earlier when Misty showed the mayor's CIP as using part of the adjustment, I kind of went, oh no, at this point, it's not the mayor's CIP, it's our CIP. So it's really our budget when it comes down to it. Obviously, I don't think any changes are going to be necessary, but I like to remind you, you know, you certainly can make amendments, but talk to Misty as early as possible on that. That's just make things a lot easier for her and make things easier for you, because there might be things that you're not thinking about and she might have some good ideas to help you with that. So it's really only going to help you. And I know for the CIP, I got feedback from a few people that they liked it, that I kind of did this introduction, hung out for a few minutes, and then I've dropped off. And so I'm going to do that again because I got some feedback that people like that. But don't hesitate to reach out with questions for me. Happy to answer any questions you might have at any point in time. And Misty obviously can answer lots of questions as well. So I'm probably too long-winded. Sorry, Randy, but I'll throw it back to you.
Very good. Thank you, Mayor Richardson. I don't see any questions at this point. I don't see anything else raised. No. Moving on then. Well, first up on the agenda after the introduction is building inspection. John, you're with us?
Good evening, everybody. Hope you can hear me. Am I in?
You are.
Okay, excellent. I'll try to make mine short and sweet. I got to figure out how I got to get the mayor excited about my position. But anyways, everybody can drive around the city of Fitchburg and they can see everything that's going on from the east side, west side, north side, south side. Extremely busy. We did get our training budget reinstated and reinstated some other mileage from what we had. So like our accomplishments this year is we never missed a beat during COVID. We showed up to the office. We did probably 10,000 inspections last year, and we're going to be on the record to do as many this year. The contractors, developers, builders, everybody, nobody even knew that they're in the COVID time. You know, we didn't miss a beat. I know City of Madison, some of those other municipalities around us, they stopped it. I didn't think it was fair to do that. We're on site every day at all the projects. So with that, basically the only thing that I really got was I was trying to, this is not a new position. This was a position that I had in 2008 that I did not fill with the retirement and somebody moving on. So this really is starting the position back. I know with the town of Madison, we're going to have more property maintenance. Two huge property maintenance issues that everybody has seen already this year. We removed 14 dilapidated trailers from the trailer park down there on MM. There was 14 units total that removed, and we're going to go and recover more. Extremely time consuming. We had several court dates, and Valerie can be a attest to that. Aztec Drive up there with the debris and everything else. Once again, an extremely time consuming job. We've got several issues going on there. And I see that as something that, well, also I'll say King James Way, Smithfield, that's the kind of properties we're going to get in the town of Madison. So with all the new building on, unfortunately, it's just the reality of it is the property maintenance sometimes gets shoved down a little bit. I don't like doing that because, but reality is we got paying customers that are expecting us there for inspections. So the buildings are getting a lot more complex out there. So I would like to get somebody on staff, start training them. And as I say, once again, with the property maintenance, it's a nightmare anymore. So I'm really trying to reiterate that we need this position. I understand the levy limit. I understand there's so much pie out there, so many slices. And I want my slice to come next year. I understand this year is full, but you're going to keep seeing this as long as I'm a department head every year until I get this position filled. So maybe I will wear you guys down. But any questions or concerns, you know, my office is always open. Please let me know.
Thank you, John. Do we have any questions from council?
John, I have a question. So with the use of this person, is there any problem areas that could be addressed more efficiently as this person come on?
Yes. So instead of us going through a neighborhood once a week, we could have somebody go through there daily. The hot spots, we try to get somebody through there every day, but in reality, as I say, we've got almost 1,200 permits going right now. That's just this year. That's not including, you know, 5 huge per mega projects that are going on that we're there daily. So this would give more time associated to more of the property maintenance issue. I don't even know if we had time to do long grass weed complaints this year. We just didn't have time. We kind of took pictures as best we could. We kind of did that. But yes, we'd be able to apply more staff time and more eyes out there during the time.
Okay, I guess another question I have is underserved areas. You know, usually you get some landlords who aren't keeping up with the property. And are you able to actually keep up with those complaints that may come in?
That's one thing that I always tell everybody. I work for you guys, but really I work for the 30,000 souls that live in the city of Fitchburg. They are priority. They never get put on the back burner. Life safety is our number one priority. So if we do have an apartment complaint, that does get pushed up. When I'm saying property maintenance, I'm saying the maintenance of the outside of the buildings, maybe the dumpsters are overflowing, that kind of situation. We'll never, ever, ever, as long as I'm department head, put the actual apartments and dwelling units on the back burner. That's number one.
Very good. Additional questions? Gabriella, I see your hand raised. Go ahead.
Thank you. So John, do you foresee the clerical float as being a person that could potentially take some administrative work off the plate of your staff that could potentially let you be out and about in the field more often?
Not really. We have somebody right now that we share with Public Works that does all our administrative stuff. Our problem is ours is just, like I explained last year, it's just not a cookie cutter. It's just not a vending machine and pull an inspector out. I mean, it takes us a couple of years to actually get somebody trained, certified, and up to snuff that we feel like they could be out on their own, unless by some miracle we could steal somebody from someplace else. But I was just at a national conference. It's nationwide as far as building inspection. There's nobody wants to get in there, and we haven't quite got it figured out. But administratively, we're okay. It's the actual feet on the ground and out in the field.
And I have another question.
Yes, go ahead, Gabriella.
John, this is just kind of a side question, and I guess we don't have to dig into this deeply, but the new MABA U.S. Boys and Girls Club partnership for that facility that's going to do trades training, are they doing any building inspection? Is that something you're aware of, something that could potentially train young people to go into this field?
As of right now, no, but yes, when they do get that up and running, I will be a face over there to see if I can, swing somebody that would possibly, we tried getting in trade schools, MATC and different things. We've had different organizations talk to. So yes, that'd be definitely someplace that we'd like to get a hold and talk to.
Additional questions? Hearing none. Thank you, John.
I have one.
I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand. Go ahead.
Yeah, apologies if it's been addressed or answered. What's the sort of entry level or level of education or kind of required for this position? Is it, what's the base level that somebody would need to be in to enter it?
If they have a high school degree and they're willing to learn, that's my base level.
Okay, thanks.
Additional questions? Seeing none. Thank you, John.
All right. Thank you, folks. Have a great night.
Next on our agenda is the planning and zoning. Sonia, the floor is yours.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Sonia Kriesel, City Planner and Zoning Administrator. My budget includes two divisions. The first is the Planning and Zoning Division, usually relatively straightforward. It is again this year. And then the second half is the Sustainability and H&I Division. That one has a little bit more going on just to reflect the projects that are moving forward there. So starting with significant accomplishments in the Planning and Zoning Division, like John, I'll mention a continued adaptation to COVID-19 response, including managing transitions in department schedules and reopening of City Hall. Our success is definitely, rides on the coattails of the support of the council and all of the other departments like Fact TV making this transition really smooth. But we're also proud of the fact that we were able to move projects forward, even with the new personnel policy that allows the hybrid schedules of in-person and remote work as well. Significant accomplishment number two, we do code maintenance and new policy development all the time, but I list two here that were more substantial and required a significant amount of staff time. The first is coordination with a development group that will bring another senior housing project to the Terra Vesta neighborhood. That's the Marquardt Management Riversong project. And the code work there was in smart code, resulting in creation of a new special district 3, working together with economic development and the mayor on that. And then also policy development and implementation of recommendations in the agriculture plan. This was in rural zoning, and it resulted in an adopted new policy that will allow rural event venues. This is a pretty substantial change in one of our rural zoning districts, and that required a lot of back and forth and kind of creative policy development. And then finally, significant accomplishment number 4, sort of the beginning work for Town of Madison. So this included preparation of a communications plan for how we might approach sharing information for that attachment, and then initial outreach components like creating a town informational webpage. New initiatives in this division for 2022 include Town of Madison work. Our main task is going to be creating new zoning districts. So when that land comes in, they need to have a Fitchburg zoning district. The second main task that we'll have is supporting public information. And then our other new initiative for 2022 that's listed is to begin development of the South Stoner Prairie neighborhood plan. This initiative was proposed as a joint effort, planning, economic development, and by the mayor. And for those of you that don't know where that South Stoner Prairie future neighborhood is, it would encompass the 276 acres south of Lacey Road and then between Seminole and Fitrona. Moving on to significant budget changes, we have moved the bicycle committee per diems over into the sustainability division. Our sustainability specialist staffs that committee, so it's just a cleanup item. Second, we increased, or rather restored, our professional development budget to pre-pandemic totals. And finally, added the $150,000 total to fund the South Stoner Prairie neighborhood plan that I just mentioned. There is a note there that this is to be funded 50% by miscellaneous income, requesting contributions from other participants. The mayor mentioned this in his introduction. So the total for the city then would be $75,000. This would of course be subject to any agreements that are brought forward. And that includes the question of whether such agreements are favorable to the council. There are pros and cons from a policy perspective that are to be considered in addition to just simply accepting those funds. That wraps up the planning and zoning division.
Any questions from council? Gabriella, you have the floor.
Thank you. So yeah, the South Stoner Prairie neighborhood plan, is there an urgency to getting this done? I guess I just hadn't heard, maybe I was out of the loop a little bit in terms of hearing that this was forthcoming. So I just wanted to hear a little bit more about the reasoning behind the timing of this year.
Right. I think some of the thought process is it really hinges on the time it takes to get through the planning process and wanting to sort of have that in the queue and ready to go. Development of the actual lands within the South Stoner Prairie might not be appropriate to bring those in, for example, with an urban service area amendment if the council and the plan commission decide there's enough vacant land still within the urban service area for development. So that type of decision can still be phased in, but the actual planning process per conversation with the mayor and economic development is to ensure that we're moving the process along to be more ready for those decisions if timing gets more critical. So I think that probably answers your question. Let me know if you have more.
I guess my follow-up would just be like, what is the potential timeline of really digging in to start needing the plan in place because there's actual work being done?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the planning process itself, based on other neighborhood plans that have gone through Fitchburg, is about 18 months. There's definitely work ahead of that in terms of getting any of these cost sharing agreements approved, doing an RFP for a consultant, getting RFP consultant contracts approved. So you can easily add 6 months on the front of that. So you're at 2 years before you have a plan that's ready to adopt. From there, the next step would be urban service area amendments submitted to the Regional Planning Commission. And that in and of itself, depending on how large the urban service area amendment is, that could take a year, I guess, give or take. It's only actually a few meetings with CARP-C and the DNR, but developing the application, working with the developer, getting it through the city approval processes, that could take a year. So right there, that's 3 years out before any developer would be able to start submitting entitlements like a subdivision plat or zoning request.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Julia, you have a question? Go ahead.
Yes, so regarding the $150,000, what happens if we don't get the $75,000 from the other participant? Who is gonna pay for that?
I can answer that one.
Yep, go ahead.
I was just saying, so a budget amendment could be done to keep it on schedule. Another option would be to delay it to the following year when an additional amount for the budget could be done at that point.
Go ahead, Julia.
The other participants, okay? Who are those participants where we are gonna seek this money? And are those people know that they had to pay for this? I want to know if this one is a realistic, initiative, to request the $150,000 and I expect it's $75,000 they're gonna be paid by other people, so.
I see Mike Z there unmuted. Perhaps you would be able to chime in, Mike.
Mr. Chair, you want me to take that one?
Yes, please, Mike, go ahead.
Okay. We've had some general conversations with two of the main property owners over there about cost sharing for the South Stoner Prairie neighborhood plan. We haven't talked specific dollar amounts yet. One of the things on my to-do list is to schedule a collective meeting between the city with those two main property owners to have that more specific conversation.
Thank you. Additional questions? Hearing none. Sonia, thank you very much for your time this evening.
Absolutely. I do have just a few more minutes.
Yes.
Moving on to the second half of my presentation.
I'm sorry,
so this
you are
is the
correct. Yes, you're correct. Go ahead.
No worries. This is the Sustainability and H&I division. So a little bit longer list of significant accomplishments as we've been busy here. So I'll go through these quickly. The Neighborhood Hub Phase 1 has progressed with approval of the contract for final design. We've also developed and released the RFP for the Teen Center Community Engagement Study over in the Verona Road West neighborhood. Continued work in the North Fish Hatchery neighborhood with community engagement. The Bicycle Committee has been working on efforts to reach gold status, and they were able to check off a couple of boxes there, including an ordinance amendment regarding bicycle registration programs. The grant writing has been busy in an effort to supplement or fund the hub effort. So $2.3 million in grant funding applications, I think is great. The status of those is still rolling in. I think a few of them have not been successful, unfortunately, but we can get updates on those as needed. And then a few others presented at the APA Upper Midwest Planning Conference, sharing our story and successes and perspectives. And then also added a bike and ped bridge over McKee Road to continue expanding Fitchburg's trail network and implement the recommendations of that bicycle plan. And then finally, a really significant effort and progress made on our renewable energy resolution, exceeding our 25 by 25 goal and then making progress towards the 100% by 2030. Moving into new initiatives for 2022. We'll continue to be busy with the hub. This will be hands-on sort of project management services for the construction plan to start in spring. Continued efforts for the Bicycle Committee to reach gold status, and then expanding the scope of H&I Committee. That just means moving it from what was only an ad hoc committee focused on the grants to a committee that's permanent and that focuses on implementation of all of the efforts under the H&I umbrella, and expanding to H&I priority neighborhood status for Southdale, which is the town of Madison. Significant budget changes then to wrap up this section. We added per diems in order to accommodate the permanency of the H&I committee. The bicycle committee was moved here into this division as previously mentioned, and we did add 2 more meetings from 4 to 6. That's been going well and allowing them to move forward with their progress. We also removed the $40,000 from professional services, which was the one-time expense to fund the Teen Center Verona Road West Community Engagement Study, but then added the $30,000 for sort of the phase 2, which is Teen Center Feasibility Study, which was included in the adopted CIP. Next, we have $20,000 in professional services to hire a consultant for concept refinement of Hub Phase 2. And then the last 2 are quite minor, but is a shift nonetheless, just to allow more flexibility in how we spend money for sustainability events. Right now, it would have to be recycling or stormwater related sustainability because it's funded by refuse. So we added those over into the sustainability division so that we can just more accurately match the funds to those projects. I will mention just 2 more things, sorry, before jumping into any questions. The staff proposal, a couple of things that weren't included. We did propose $25,000 for sustainability plan development. This was removed in the proposed budget. I think our finance director might have a couple of ideas. I don't know if the ARPA funds or other sources might be possible, but this is something that was called for sort of in public feedback in our comprehensive plan process, and something that's been proposed in past years to move that sustainability focus to the next step and have a more strategic sort of guidance for how we approach that conversation. And then the other step was, or the other proposed item that was not included, was an increase in the H&I grant funds. This is a recommendation that came from the committee. The recommendation was to go to $75,000. Instead, this proposed budget includes $63,000. And I believe some of the logic there is that we have $11,000 in unused funds from the Fitchburg fund that could be carried over and used if an amendment was approved to allow that $11,000 to be added to the 63. That's all I have.
Excuse me, questions? Questions from council? Gabriella, go ahead.
Thank you. So I was going to ask about the sustainability plan, so thanks for bringing it up. Is that for 25,000? Do you think that that's something that we could potentially, if the funding was there, could that be done within a year time frame? Would that be something that'd be easy to do because we'd likely hire a consultant, or is a lot of that for 25,000? Would a lot of that work have to be done in department?
Yeah, for 25,000, I think that would require still a lot of in-house work. But sustainability is complex, interconnected. We didn't know, I think the scope isn't really fleshed out yet in terms of exactly what the city or the RCC would like to propose for a scope of the plan. So we thought 25,000 was a good starting point to at least give us some support for any critical efforts to be determined, whether that be public participation or technical data review, like I said, to be determined on those things. Alternatively, if we didn't have the $25,000 now, perhaps some continued effort could be made in scoping that out and better identifying sort of like a plan before the plan or a plan for the plan in order to better understand what direction we want to go for that. Thanks. I think if you had a consultant do the whole plan, it would be much more than 25,000.
Yeah, okay, that's what I was thinking. Great.
Additional questions? Hearing none. Sonia, thank you very much for your presentation this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
You do the same. Moving on. Economic and Development. Mike, you are with us.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, everybody. Thanks for the opportunity to give an overview of the Economic Development budget, which is General Revenue Fund, our CETA budget, which is generated from the room tax, and then our housing budget, which is from the housing extension that's available through us through TID districts. So those are the 3 funds that I'll be covering tonight. In addition to another healthy year of development and construction activity, here are some of the significant accomplishments. One big thing was the administration transition and the work that we were involved with through that process. We also worked closely with Public Works on the Lacey Road reconstruction, and Joyce specifically assisted assessing, clerks, finance, a lot of projects late in 2020 that didn't show up last year. So just wanted to give a shout out to her for her intergovernmental and departmental collaboration. She's also been helping to be the liaison to the broadband work group as well. Then we've been engaged with the services of H&A advisors to develop an affordable endowment townhome housing pilot project. You'll be seeing that next week, Tuesday, at the Finance and Council meetings. And then we've been continuing to focus on our COVID programs, not only the temporary premise expansion permit that you guys authorized again this year, which our businesses really appreciated, gave them a really good economic boost for the ones that took advantage of that. And then also the Forward Fitchburg Biz Boost Loan Program. We've secured a potential development partner for the Fosside property. That's the clean fill site between Highway 14 and MM. That would be the Royal Capital Group. They will start to appear on the Plan Commission agenda next in October here with the pre-application meeting. And then we were successful with another $1 million T-grant application for both the Lacey Road and then wrapping up the Fahey Glen extension. So helping to underwrite those infrastructure projects in the city. Looking ahead to 2022, hopefully if you approve the Housing Endowment Program next week, Tuesday, the parameters, we will go to the next level with H&A of analysis for that program, more site specific. We're going to start to do some outreach to the town of Madison businesses in anticipation of them officially joining us October 30th of 2022. We're working with Bob Shea to hopefully secure a new developer for his property on the west side of Fitchburg across from Super Target that Myers was previously looking at. We're in conversations with him and a couple of potential prospects for that. Working with Edgewood College on their CARPC application for their athletic complex that would be in the southwest quadrant of Lacey Road and Seminole Highway. We're continuing our organizational update in the office here. Since I keep a lot of information, Joyce is helping to coordinate and streamline some of that. And then we're facilitating the launch of the South Stoner Prairie Neighborhood Plan, hopefully with our development partners that would also participate financially. And then working on various projects to continue the revitalization momentum of North Fish Hatchery Road. We've got 4 great projects that have already opened up there. We've got a couple more that are in the pipeline and a few more that we're focused on that are site specific up in that corridor. Some really good activity there. And thanks again, that's kudos to you guys for investing in the reconstruction of North Fish Hatchery Road. We had hoped that if we invested in that, if we build it, they will come. And I think that's happening. And the numbers getting better as far as what we need for additional valuation to make us all breathe a sigh of relief that we will make ourselves whole on the investment in that reconstruction. So thanks for doing that. Next up, I've got significant budget changes here. The big one, of course, is the room tax revenue. And we're hoping that this year we come in at the proposed or projected number of about 250,000. We're almost halfway there. And we don't have the third quarter numbers in yet, which is usually our strongest quarter. But in 2022, based on information we were hearing from our Visitor Bureau partner, the Fitchburg Chamber, and also our regional partner, Destination Madison, and with seeing events like Ironman World Dairy, some of the epic business coming back here in Wisconsin football weekends, we're looking at kind of 70% of the 2019 revenue. So in 2022, we're looking at about $367,000. So we're hoping it gets back to that level. But CETA really kind of takes a stress test approach. If the money doesn't come in at that level, we obviously aren't going to make commitments and spend dollars that we don't have. And the second bullet point there, 70% under state statute goes to our partner, the Fitchburg Chamber Visitor Business Bureau. That's a sliding scale again, based on the revenue that comes in is the 70% that they would receive. Based on the conservative budgeting, we didn't bring back all the line items that we kind of put on hold for this year, but a couple that we did bring back were, we'd like to do the business luncheon again. We've kind of taken 2 years off from that just because you couldn't even bring a group together to have a large event like that. But we're hoping by next year that we can gather again. And the businesses, that was always a fun event and a great networking event that we'd like to bring back. We reinstated some dollars for travel and training. And then we also wanted to bring back the full Memorial Day observation. We've been kind of running a scaled down version the last couple of years, but we'd like to bring it back to the level that we had kind of pre-COVID. One thing that CETA included in this budget is we had a sports infrastructure fund back in the day when there was a separate 1% of the room tax that went to sports related activities. We still had some money left in there. And one of the initiatives that we would like to be a catalyst for, just like we've done previously for the hub and for the library, to move those initiatives forward, is this would be going towards hopefully a future B-cycle program here in Fitchburg that the Bike Committee, Bike Fitchburg, and Phil Groupie from the planning office are working on. So we've got that kind of dedicated to be kind of a launch for that program. There would also be private sector partners that would be part of that, and you'll be hearing more about that as those committees bring some proposals forward. Then we've got a line item in for 2022. If you approve the housing endowment program next week, Tuesday, we go to the next level of analysis, which gets more site specific. And then at the request of some folks on CETA and also the housing advisory, we've asked our advisors to submit an addendum to that to look at kind of a market-based option only, but then also one that maybe would look at a land trust option too. So that's why you see the additional 6,000 there. And then we just added some dollars, small amount to take our new city administrator, Chad Brecklin, with us to some of the housing conferences that are out there as we move forward. So I think those are the highlights there. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Questions from council? I don't see any hands raised. Mike, thank you.
You let me off easy. Thank you.
Yes.
Have a good night, everybody.
All right. Moving on to our next agenda item is the senior center. And Jill, I'll turn the floor over to you.
All right, thanks. Good evening, everybody. We'll start out with the significant accomplishments. A lot of ours revolve around how we really kept our doors open, not really, but continued to serve our older adults during COVID. We never really did close down. We just kind of pivoted and changed a lot of things so we could continue to offer services that people needed. I think COVID really highlighted the importance of social connection and the downside of social isolation. And so, we did a lot of outreach efforts. We sent a lot of greeting cards. We made a ton of phone calls. We did drive-bys, and we quickly, thanks to Dave, the assistant director, he was able to learn a lot of new technology so we can move a lot of our programs virtually. So it was a great opportunity to kind of move that forward. We did help over 100 people get the COVID vaccinations through Promega and a Grace, which was great. And then when it was time to reopen, we did that. We were the first senior center to reopen our congregate meal site early in June and did that safely and successfully. And I can say we're busier than ever right now. People are really happy to be back. We also started piloting a meal program at Hy-Vee called My Meal, My Way. And so that's on Wednesdays now and fairly successful. And then during COVID, Dave was able to do some research and do some looking for a different method to register people online. And so he spent a lot of time moving our program registration to a different platform, doing some self-registration, just trying to do more user-friendly things. And as Misty knows, we're really trying to look at how we can start to take payments online using a more affordable program than what a lot of rec and senior centers are using. And then also to credit to our social workers, we continue to work with Edgewood nursing students, and we did work with UW students to keep programs available to older adults. We used Edgewood students to connect with older adults via the phone, help them sign up for COVID vaccinations, and just kept that partnership alive. So for 2022, a lot of our initiatives are connected with Town of Madison too. We're working with Dane County now, just trying to make sure that the funding that section of the town of Madison that we're taking on gets reallocated to Fitchburg. So we have to do a lot of looking at numbers, case management and nutrition particularly, and then transportation. Newbridge, Madison is who case manages clients in that area right now. So I've been in contact with them pretty regularly, trying to see what their caseload is and what will be transferred to us. Starting at the beginning of the year, we'll look at new marketing and outreach plans so we can make sure that, you know, come October, those residents in the town of Madison that will become Fitchburg residents are aware of our services and how to access us if they need us. Also trying to look at how we're going to meet the needs of all the new apartments coming, and obviously a new position is one of those. And then, you know, we have always been pretty driven to expand our outreach to Hispanic older adults, and with a new social worker that hopefully we can hire, we would require that social worker to speak Spanish. We do work very closely with Newbridge Madison's Cultural Diversity Program. But, you know, it still doesn't mean that we can help our clients when they come in if they are English speaking. We do have the translation service that we did bring on board this year, and that's helpful, but I think it's time that one of the staff here at the Senior Center does speak Spanish. And then we're looking at expanding, well, I guess it would be putting in a patio outside. We have some outdoor seating. We found that it's really nice to have outdoor areas to socialize and to offer programs, especially in lieu of COVID. And the way things are going, I think people have learned to really enjoy the outdoors. Next down there is working with the City of Fitchburg, and just I'm throwing out a lot of ideas. I think I've talked to some of you about, you know, how do we meet the needs of the transportation for older adults in Fitchburg? How are we moving these people around? And what are we going to do when all these apartments come and are built and open? And it's always been an issue. It continues to be an issue. And so there's just some ideas, like I said, I've shared with a couple alder about maybe how we can meet this need with maybe some donations from housing development companies. I'm looking into purchasing a bus again. I'm all over the place, but this is a topic that we really have to address because, you know, as you know, for the whole city, moving people around the city is really a struggle. And then lastly, just looking at a way that we can change some things around here to better accommodate social workers, durable medical equipment. We have a humongous loan closet that is highly used, and we're just kind of busting at the seams. And so just looking at some ways to have better storage and move some folks around. So moving down to significant budget changes, nothing too major until I get to the new addition of the social worker, but I'm increasing very slightly some fees for aerobics and functional fitness. Functional fitness is a chair-based exercise class where aerobics is a little more cardio. We do get our own advertisers for the newsletter, and so we're going to increase that fee very slightly to those advertisers. We generally get about 12 to 13 a year. Any more than that really kind of makes the newsletter be very busy, so we keep it down, just try to cover our expenses. You'll see a decrease in contractual services because we do use a lot of independent contractors for programs, and due to COVID, you know, when we're planning this budget back in June, we just weren't sure what that was going to look like. We're not offering as many programs that we're using to hire outside independent contractors, so I dropped that service or that fee down. We did add the $300 for language line. It's a really, really affordable service. I don't think we will even reach that amount in 2022, but it's really nice to have in place when we do need it. And so that was added into the budget. This was kind of added, it just fit well into the senior center budget, but the $500 is a music license fee. This kind of came about years ago when we started concerts at McKee, and you know, you have to have a license for music, and there's two different companies that kind of come at the city to make you pay for license fees. So it makes sense that we are paying some of this money because music we use for any programs, for aerobics, anything like that needs to be licensed. Even the on-hold music, I don't even know if there's any hold music when people call here and you're put on hold, but if there is, you have to have a license for that. So that's now in the senior center budget. Money was put in the budget for some public information as well as nutrition supplies, because when we do annex the town of Madison, we're going to do that marketing and that outreach. We know our home delivered meals are going to go up and we're going to need more supplies. And then lastly, the big ask is the additional social worker. And I did want to point out, and you don't need to go back to that, Misty, but it's, a lot of council might not realize that we do get quite a nice chunk of money from Dane County for case management and for nutrition. And the county exec just came out with his budget on Friday, and we will see an increase in case management. And Misty, you'll be happy to hear, we'll probably go up to about 98,000 in 2022. And some of this increase too is because our case management client load has gone up. And so when those numbers of who we serve is put into this Dane County formula, this then equates to more money for us as we serve more clients. So, so this new initiative, I'm really thankful the mayor put this in his budget. Initially, I was going to ask for a full-time social worker. And, I always want to be fiscally responsible to the city. And I knew there was a lot of positions being asked, and every one of them is justified. And so as I was doing just some more thinking about this position and how we work very closely with the police department now with the CIT program, I thought that maybe this would be a good way to serve both of our departments. It could be utilized as a pilot for the police, and it could serve us well right now, because we do need another social worker on staff at this time. So the ultimate goal of our social work program, a community social worker, is to keep older adults independent and in their own home for as long as possible. And that's really for all older adults too. Nobody wants to go into a facility. Right now, the average cost of a nursing home in Wisconsin is $8,200 a month. When people can't private pay this, we pick up that bill. So our program, our social work program, our senior center is all based on keeping people healthy. It's preventative. And so if we can save someone going to a nursing home who doesn't have any money, we are saving taxpayers money. The social workers go into people's homes or apartments. We do not serve people in skilled nursing facilities, CBRFs, or assisted living. We just do their homes or apartments. They will do an assessment with that client, put together a case plan, and then they'll just monitor and work with that person to make sure that those goals are met that are developed within that case plan. And then when the time comes, they can't live at home any longer, they will help with that transition, either with family members, if placement is required. And sometimes folks don't have anybody. So our social workers are doing that work and trying to get them connected with the right services so they can transition into a facility. Right now, we have about 310 case management clients. Because we receive county funding, they define what that means, and that is 2 services or more. So if somebody calls in and says, I can't drive, I need a ride to the doctor, and I need meals, that's 2 services. That would be a simple case management client. Okay, let's sign them up for meals, let's follow them, let's try to give them a ride. But what we're seeing now is a lot more complexity to our case management clients. We are, I know that the city council is very aware of an issue of hoarding in the area. This is not uncommon. Just because you don't see it outside, we have many clients that have that issue just inside. We deal with a lot of dementia. We're dealing with a lot of mental health and also substance abuse. Our social workers are helping with powers of attorney and guardianship issues. And all of these are very time consuming. And we're just seeing more and more of those complex case management clients and those needs. As you know, the city has forever and ever, we had hardly any senior housing, and man, it is just coming like crazy, and it's great. But it's really concerning to me how we're going to meet the needs of all of these new seniors that are in our area. We've got the High Line that was opened in 2020 with 160 affordable units. And as you can see, that we have other housing coming down the pike. As Sonia spoke about, the River Song is 125 units up in Terra Bessa. Quarry Ridge is the luxury apartments behind Target. Limerick is just right close to the roundabout on Lacey and Heat Farms, and that's 100 affordable units, and that will be opening next year. And then when we annex the town of Madison, we've got the Novation Commons, which is 60 affordable units. So that in itself is just the units coming down the pike. This does not speak to people aging in place, which we do have that as well. And I gave Misty, can you share that handout that I gave you? Thanks, Misty. I didn't get this in the packet, but it is something I wanted to share, and not so much to justify this year and this shared position, but kind of moving forward, maybe even into 2023. On this graph, pulling from the 2020 census data that was available, I'm just showing what the population of each of these surrounding communities are. So Fitchburg and McFarland, all of these have case management programs just like we do. They all get county funding. So the blue is the population of the city. The orange is adults over 65. Now, why I pulled 65, I really don't know now. It should have been 60 because Dane County, we serve 60 and over. And technically we here in Fitchburg, because we're not 100% funded by Dane County for our case management program, we serve younger. We had a client here today who just, well, he was 59, but we do have clients in their 50s. So the orange number reflects what that number of older adults is in our community. And then the top number, which is kind of yellow, shows the hours of social work services that each of us provide. So as you can see, you know, we have two full-time social workers. Our population is pretty high. When you look at McFarland, which has 80 hours of social work services, only 1,400 seniors over 65. Oregon, 1,200 seniors over 65 with 80 hours of social work services. You can see that, you know, we're getting pretty strapped here. Even Stoughton has 110 hours and they've got 21, almost 2,200 older adults over 65. So, you know, I'm a visual person, so this really kind of helps cement for me, like, yeah, you know, our social workers are working really hard to meet the needs of our community. And also Fitchburg is a lot more diverse and challenging than some of these other communities. So as we do move forward, you know, don't be surprised that this half-time position, however it comes about in 2022, that I will be coming back with hopefully a full-time position just for the senior center. So back to, you know, this ask with the police. I will definitely, obviously the police will speak tomorrow and they will give their opinion of the shared position, but I can tell you that both departments are really excited about this partnership. We are on board about the way that we would use this position. We are in agreement that this position would be housed at the senior center because it just makes sense. We currently have 2 social workers on staff. Amy Jordan has 17 years, Sarah Fulkers has 16 years at the senior center. You know, so these are some well-experienced, awesome social workers that to embed this new position at the senior center will just be really helpful to reduce that learning curve. They know a lot of services and programs in Dane County, not just for older adults, because once you're in the human service world, all of that stuff kind of overlaps. So, they'll be a great resource. And myself, you know, I've supervised social workers for a long time, and so I kind of get that whole world and how that should go. So hopefully the police will expand upon what they feel this position will do for them. We did agree it wouldn't really be a crisis-driven position. It's more of a follow-up. I think that hopefully the goal would be to reduce calls that really don't require a gun. You know, maybe it's a domestic abuse, maybe it's substance abuse, but it's connecting those people with services. So calls could be reduced. It's less expensive to hire a social worker who doesn't need a uniform or any sort of equipment. And then I think it really builds a sense of community and trust. And I think for the police, like I said, it's an awesome way to pilot something like this. It's definitely a trend across the nation, but even in our own local communities, after some research, I found out that Janesville, Delavan, Whitewater, and Madison all have social workers embedded in their police departments. I think Matt and Dane County Sheriff also has a social worker embedded. So I think it's been proven that this is an effective role for a social worker to be within a police department, but the police can decide that maybe after a year. But again, I'm just really excited about the position. I think it's great to utilize an employee like this that I think can benefit the whole city, not just both of our departments. So that's all I have.
Very good, Jill. Thank you very much. I'm going to start out the questions. Mine maybe is more of an observation, but there is a question in there. Again, I want to thank you for the work that you're doing.
Randy.
Pardon? You cannot hear me? One moment.
There.
Can you hear me now? Can, okay, all right. Let me back up here. First of all, thank you again, Jill, for the work that you do. On a more personal note, my own parents that are up in their upper 80s, and I don't think they mind me saying their age, but they're not in the community, but they're in another local community, and it's just wonderful to see that they have the resources that that are available for them through the senior center. But let me back up to the department statistics. Meals served, I see in 2018, 15,135 meals were served, and then, of course, there's a decrease. And I understand that 2020 and 2021, the projected actuals are probably COVID related, but I'm very impressed with 2020 actuals for 10,282, given that's probably the height of COVID.
Right.
And that's so important, I think, for so many seniors that are isolated a good portion of their day, and to have a meal served. I'm curious though as to why 2018 there's been a gradual decrease, and then even in the projected 2022 there's 14,000 meals projected. What happened from 2018 to going forward?
Well, I can tell you, it's really dependent on it can ebb and flow. And I do recall this sort of dramatic decrease. And, when we get a lot of regulars coming 5 days a week, all year long, your numbers just skyrocket. And I do recall that we had several people pass in 2019 that stopped coming to this. Well, obviously they stopped coming, and we saw a big decrease. Is it 2,000 worth? Well, when you count, if it's 2 or 3 people that came every single day, and that's 5 times, that's 15 times a week, times 4 weeks in a month, times the year, it really changes the statistics. So it doesn't take a lot if you have a regular client that doesn't come as often. And so that was really why that decreased. Certainly COVID, it decreased again, but I will say, a lot of our congregate meal clients went on home delivered meals, so we were able to maintain. A lot of people, they didn't want that contact. They didn't want people coming to their doors. Some people were dealing with, they've moved in with family and stuff. I think, Randy, will see that increase again, but like I said, it really ebbs and flows. Like we delivered to McKee Park, that's got 43, 2 units of 43 apartments each. We used to deliver 20, 25 meals. This week, we delivered today 3 to Chapel Valley Apartments. So you just don't know, but we're picking up a lot of clients at the High Line right now. And today we had 24 in for lunch. And that seems to be what we're getting now, 24, 25 for lunch a day. So I don't know if that answers your question, Randy.
It does, and it's everything that I had suspected. But again, that number for 2020 is still an impressive number. I mean, considering what we as a country were up against. So I'm just very pleased to see that. And, but thank you very much. And I'll turn it over to Julia. She has a question.
Sure.
I see.
Hi, Jill. I am doing it. Hi, Jill. I have a question about, I really like the position about, to hire someone who speaks Spanish. My concern is, because this person is going to be working, I imagine that the social working in the senior center are more focused to work with the senior people, and then this position, it will be shared with the police department that we don't know yet what are going to be the task that this person is going to perform with the police department. So do you think this is going to be kind of difficult to find a person that is like a bilingual, focus 50% working with the elderly community, and then assigned to a police department that they could be, as you mentioned, could be in a call for, sexual abuse or domestic abuse, So how do you envision that you're going to find this perfect?
Well,
You know what I mean? So.
Yeah, I understand your concern. Madison, University of Madison has a social work school. Madison is not lacking in social workers. I agree, we're going to bring someone on board and we're going to say, you need to do all of these things. But I also think that, we know what we're doing here at the senior center, but I think for the police department, and I met several times with interim police chief, as well as Ned Hartwick. And, we talked about that side of it is going to be more pilotish. We're going to have challenges where they might want to change it. And so, we're going to be looking for someone, not that has skills in all of these areas. We're going to look for someone that is up to the challenge of being part of something new, paving the way for what this might look like. Adding the Spanish speaking, Julia, it might be a little bit of a barrier, but in other positions, we haven't hired a social worker for a long time, obviously, but I know when we put the call out for our receptionist, it's not a receptionist, our office manager, we did have Spanish speaking client or applicants come forward. So I guess my gut tells me we're going to have some applicants. If it is too challenging and those applicants aren't a good fit, then maybe we take that out, or maybe, as we put it out there, we say highly sought after or highly recommended versus required. So I understand your concern.
Go ahead.
I want to do a follow-up on some of my comments, and I'm shut up. So my concern is because maybe you can find as a special social worker that they want to work with the elderly, but they say, no, I don't want to work with even close to be on call with the police department because I don't know if I have the skill or the knowledge to handle, because it's a different environment, you know what I mean? So that one is that one is, I would like to hear from the police department tomorrow. So how do you envision to see this position, and also how you're going to allocate the time to, because maybe you realize that we are going to have, 400 more new seniors moving to Fitchburg, and then maybe that social worker is going to have time to allocate to the police department. And then next year you're going to come here and say, you know what, guys, this 50% is not working, so I need another 50%. So this is what I'm saying. I think, I don't know if you guys have thought about this position, like working together, more, in detail, you know what I mean? Yeah, so that's it.
I do understand what you're saying. And again, I think, the police will go, we talked a lot about what does that position look like for you? And again, the social work field is a field where people just want to help. And I think at this phase, in this new sort of pilot with the police department, We're not going to find an expert on every single age and every single issue. But what a social worker does is they can connect with resources. They can offer that follow-up. You know, the police already have a CIT program in place, crisis intervention team. And so we work with them. And this is sort of very similar to that program where, you know, there's a situation the police are called out to, but it needs follow-up because it doesn't require a weapon. It requires somebody to reach out and say, how are you doing? You know, what can we do to help connect you with services? Well, there's no time for these officers to be in that role, even though they do have officers that we've worked with. So this social worker, and that was sort of the discussion we had with the police, that, you know, that's kind of what this person can now do, is take some of that stress off of these officers that are performing semi-social work duties as it is by following up. You know, it shows you care. You don't have to, you're not going to solve every single situation. This will not be crisis driven, as I mentioned in the beginning, where, you know, a social worker is just charting and all of a sudden they get this crisis call from the police. First of all, that's dangerous. That is not what we're looking for. We're looking for right now, and I think the police will agree, that this position is going to be community building. It's going to be following up in situations that aren't dangerous. It's going to be connecting people to services, and it's going to send this message that, you know, the city of Fitchburg is progressive. They want to help solve problems and issues maybe through a different lens. And your statement about coming back and asking for a full-time social worker, that is true. I probably will ask for a full-time social worker in 2023 because I wanted to ask for one in 2022, because given all of these apartments coming, looking at the chart that I shared about all the data and where we were with hours compared to other municipalities, we're really low in terms of the hours that we provide for social work services for older adults. So my goal is that, we would get a full-time social worker down the road. If the police feel that this is a great fit for them, as I mentioned, this can be sort of a trial and error, a pilot. I do know there's a lot of Department of Justice money out there, grant money, that unfortunately we missed the deadline for right now. But there is money out there where the police actually could embed a full-time social worker that you then could really sort of get more skillful about working in a police environment. But again, this is more of a pilot for them. So we can sort of work this position and hire someone with them knowing, you know what, things might change. The duties that we ask you to do might ebb and flow a little bit, but we know that the framework for the position will be solid. It's going to be follow-up, referral, connecting people with services, community outreach, just sending this message to the community of Fitchburg that we care. The city cares. They care about you. We don't need to send somebody with a gun to every single call, but we can send somebody without a gun that cares just as much, but the optics of that is very different. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
Jim, you have a question?
Well, Joe, I'm really excited about this position. I do believe that you're probably going to need a full-time person in the police department and
Yes.
in your area. In Madison, I was in charge of the mental health unit, and we had embedded 3, at that time, mental health workers into the unit, and the amount of time that they were able to do on follow-up, being proactive, really saved officer time. I mean, I think it was really hugely successful. And I think that this is a start to really reimagining what police do and how we can really implement social workers. So I really appreciate, your foresight on this.
Thanks.
Yes, go ahead, Chad.
I'd also like to add that I think that this is an opportunity for us to demonstrate even additional cross-department cooperation. I think that's been one thing that I've heard over my brief time in this role is to improve cooperation, collaboration, and communication across departments. And while I do think that the senior center and the police department do already enjoy a significant level of collaboration, communication, and cooperation. This is a position that is really going to strengthen that relationship and improve the services that both departments ultimately provide to the very high number of community members that interact with both police and or the senior center. And I also think that, as Jill has indicated, that their senior center social workers are already dealing with many situations that have police overlap already because those seniors are victims of crimes. And this, to me, is really a very good example of how two departments can come together to best serve the city of Fitchburg. And I applaud Jill for bringing it together, bringing it forward.
Thanks.
Additional questions? Hearing none, Jill, thank you very much for your presentation this evening.
Thank you.
Moving on, our next item on the agenda is library. And Wendy,
Yes,
the floor is yours.
excellent. Good evening, everyone. So starting off with significant accomplishments from 2021. Similar to the senior center, a lot of it revolved around finding ways to provide services when we were closed for the pandemic. So we did exclusively curbside pickup through early May. We did a lot of online programming, story times on Facebook, that kind of thing. We also put together take and make craft packages for all ages that people could pick up outside. Printing services, we added more Wi-Fi access. So just kind of doing everything we could to get people the services that they needed without being able to come into the building. Then in early May, we got to transition into what we called express services. That was really encouraging people to come in, grab their holds, head out again, not lingering in the library. And then we just kind of through the year been slowly going back to normal services. And I would say after Labor Day, we're back to our normal hours. Our study rooms are open, the meeting rooms are open for reservations. So almost everything is back to normal with the exception that you have to wear a mask in the building. So that's all been going very well. We've also been focusing on some staff training. The Ripple project is something we've been doing with Beyond the Page, which is a humanities foundation that funds programming for Dane County libraries. And so that has a social equity focus. So we're looking at how to make all the Dane County libraries more inclusive. We did start retrofitting our fluorescent light fixtures. We've got fluorescent lights all through the library. And so we started retrofitting those. We're probably maybe a third of the way through the building, hoping to get that project finished in the next year. We replaced some furniture, including the meeting room tables. Those tables get used really hard. So those were sort of the first big furniture replacement we've needed to do at the library now that we're 10 years old. And then we are in the process of adding a print management system. So right now, if you print at the library, we are on the honor system. And a lot of people seem to forget to pay on their way to the building. So this is gonna have people paying before they're actually printing, which I think will save a lot on costs for toner and paper. New initiatives for 2022. So our outreach librarian position just happened to become vacant about the week before we shut down for the pandemic, which was really fortunate for us, considering that that's really a position that couldn't be doing very much at all. So we have left that position vacant. We are hoping to hire it in early 2022 in the hopes that we can get them trained and kind of connected with community partners to do programming for summer 2022. So I think that's going to take a lot of effort on our part, but really excited to get that back up and running because it's something that I know people have been missing. The Ripple project that I talked about, we've been doing staff training for that, but the hope is that that will expand into public programming in 2022. So that'll be something that we work with the other libraries in the county for. We still have our strategic plan that we're working on. Right now, our inclusive services work group is doing a lot of work and a lot of training. The print management is part of that. And I'm sure we'll have new projects that crop up as well. And then it is almost time for us to replace our automated materials handling system. So that is the giant machine in the back room that's hooked up to the drive-through book drop, and it handles all of our returns. That is 11 years old now. So we are gonna look at bids. This is in the CIP. So we'll get bids for it next year in hopes of installing in 2023. All right, and then changes to the budget. So this is the point in the program where I remind you how library funding kind of works. It's a little bit different than the other departments. We're not part of the general fund. We are our own fund. We have sort of Missy and I have an understanding that the library does get an increase in the tax levy based on net new construction, but also expenditure restraint. So that's 4.5% this year, and we have to live within those means. So if that's a good year, that's great. We can add some things, and if it's a bad year, then we don't get to. So that's what this budget is based on. The other thing that's kind of different is that money then is awarded to the library board, and the library board decides how to spend it. So I think we've had someone use the phrase, you throw the money over the wall, and the library board decides how to spend it. And it's worked out the whole 10 years that we've been open. So this budget does include the new proposal that we had asked for, and that was taking 2 part-time custodian positions and converting them into a full-time position. So we did have to add benefits. That is included in the mayor's budget and in what you're seeing here. So we used to have a morning custodian and an evening custodian. The morning custodian has been with us since we opened. The evening custodian, we have filled 9 times. It is just been a really difficult position to keep filled, but also to supervise, because the idea was that they were there late at night so they could clean when we were closed. And that comes with a lot of unsupervised time. It's kind of been a challenge for us. So our morning guy is great. He's interested in going full-time. So we thought that this was the year that we should make that change. All right, and then if we can go back to other projects. Excellent. So the electricity bill, since we put solar on the roof, and we've done some work to the chiller, so I think it's working better, plus the O'Brien solar fields, our bills have been going down consistently. So we were able to reduce that. I think if we can finish up the LED project next year, that'll help even more. So that's everything I have. Does anybody have questions?
Yeah, so open it to the floor. Julia, go ahead.
Yeah, hi, Wendy. My question is, so for the position, the $32,000, why doesn't come that money from your own budget instead from tax levy?
I can answer that if you want. So it does come from tax levy, but that's where we mentioned we provide an allocation of tax levy to the library, and then they get to decide how to spend it. So it is from property taxes, but it's within the allocation that the library board was provided, that 4.5% increase.
Okay, and from where does that number come from, the 4.5?
The 4.5, so it's levy limits is based primarily on net new construction or the expenditure restraint programs. We kind of have those 2 constraints for us, and then it's whichever increase is lower is what we base that increase on. So ultimately, the council gets to make that decision, but that arrangement, I guess, has worked out pretty well recently.
Another question for Wendy. Have you tried to outsource that to professional service, cleaning services for the night? You know what I mean? Because if you're looking for someone to clean the library when you close the library, you know what I mean? So
Kevin Richmond, who is buildings and grounds supervisor, and I talked about this a lot. And I have not had great luck with outsourcing cleaning in the past. I think having an evening position is even more difficult, just because there's absolutely no supervision and very little communication. We talked about this a lot, and we feel like we'll have good enough coverage. We do also share a full-time custodian with City Hall, Dan Ohm, so he is half library and half City Hall. So he is around during the day, as it's Kevin. So I think that we can cover all of our needs without needing to have somebody in at night.
Additional questions? Hearing none. Wendy, thank you very much for your time this evening.
Thank you.
Next on our agenda is Park and Recreation. Scott, the floor is yours.
Good evening, Randy. Thank you. A couple of things in regards to significant accomplishments for 2021. If I can draw your attention to page 150 in the departmental statistics, the recreational program, even in light of COVID, has really had a normal summer, if you would. So we're really proud of that. And certainly too, another area that the recreation department manages is the park shelter and the athletic field rentals, which have been really strong this year. And it may have been a bit of a godsend in that in light of COVID, people were really interested in getting outside and enjoying the park. So we did gain a lot of customers that way. In related to parks, we're continuing to implement the Fahey Field Park Plan, which you may have known that we did get our 8 pickleball courts constructed this year. And actually, Sonia spoke a little bit about the hub, Nine Spring Hub Phase 1. And at the end of the day, this is a property that was attained through the parkland dedication ordinances. So it's really a hybrid park facility. So we're really excited about that. We were able to expand our community garden projects. Certainly in Swan Creek, we had some additional plots, but we also added garden plots in Hugo Jamestown, Corey Hill, and Briarwood parks. There was a small work group that's been working on the improvement of the Veterans Memorial Park at Gorman Wayside, and we were able to get a circular path paved through there, along with a couple stopping spots for additional and new monuments. We do have one big new monument there. We're working on the inclusive playground, which you may be aware of, adjacent to the splash pad at McKee. And then we're also beginning to do the update of the 5-year park and open space plan. New initiatives for 2022. I didn't include it in my list, but we're continuing on our Stoner Prairie park planning efforts. Fahey Fields, if you're familiar with the pickleball courts, we've got an east-west path there, and we're scheduled to put some path lighting there, along with a playground. And then the mayor did include a drinking fountain for the pickleball courts. We do continue to do the forestry division, do some forestry management work, a lot of work in S. Johnson and McGaw Parks. We're gonna replace the basketball court at Byrne Park and update the playground at Hillside Heights Park. We really tried to do one of those improvements in each park every year. Hatchery Hill, we're also gonna be doing some grading in Hatchery Hill. It's an area that's become a little bit low and becomes a bit wet in the spring. So we're going to be doing some initial grading in Hillside or Hatchery Hill Park to make it more usable during the spring. One item on page 152 with the expenditure detail, just a friendly reminder that the Nine Springs item 289, the Nine Springs lease does go up $1,000 annually, so that's indicated there. I do take note in line item 323 and 325. The mayor did include in his budget a combination park and department, our streets worker for 2022. So there's some related expenses in those expenditure lines for 2022. I did put a 2% increase in the utilities and telephone, which is $365 in the parks budget on page 154. I will tell you on 157, the department personnel, it indicates a vacant position, Andy Shackleton. Our new park maintenance worker is Marcus Suter. And actually, I'll get that to you, Misty, so we could update that sheet. And we did, in addition to the combined parks and public works worker, we did also request an additional park maintenance worker for 2022, along with additional hours for the urban forester naturalist, but that didn't make the budget per the mayor this year. And I think with that, it's kind of a recap. Certainly, I could answer any questions that anyone may have.
Gabriella, go ahead.
Thank you. I've got a couple of things. First, Scott, I believe that you had requested an increase in our urban foresters' hours, Anna Healy, from 3 days a week to 4 days. Is that true? That was part of your original request?
Yep, that's correct. Yep.
Great. And could you just talk about the need for increased hours? Like, why did you make that request? What was the need for the city?
Well, certainly, I think Anna's workload, and she's doing a lot of work with volunteers. What's coming to happen too is that there's other departments that are in need of forestry and natural resources assistance. So, Anna is always willing and interested in helping, but it does get to a point where, unfortunately, there has to be a priority of work that she can undertake. And with all the street tree planting, the emerald ash borer mitigation, I know, Gabriella, you did include some additional dollars and resources in 2023, I believe it was, for, when the town of Madison comes on board. So, I think it's just a case of capacity. She does a lot of work with volunteers, which really, is a benefit to the city. We get a lot of work done. And, we're really trying to enhance our natural areas and those kinds of things. So there definitely is a lot of capacity.
She serves as our naturalist as well, not just our forester, because cities sometimes have a separate forester and a separate naturalist, but she serves both purposes in our city.
She does. Yep.
Okay. And I have go ahead. No, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, and I noticed that I didn't mention the significant budget changes from 2021 to 2022 on page 151. We did make some adjustments to the rec and shelter revenues due to COVID. We were able to secure $5,000 additionally for trees, and actually, with the help of Misty, I did include in the operating budget some additional dollars for our community garden expansions, but Misty reminded me that we did have some park improvement dollars in these individual parks, so we're able to utilize the funds that we have in there to get some additional amenities for those community gardens. So sorry about that, Gabriella.
Do you want to follow up with that, Gabriella? Then I'll turn it back.
I have a separate question, but I'm happy to let someone else go.
No, I'll turn it to Julia. She was next on the list. Go ahead, Julia.
Hi, Scott. So can you tell us in the last 5 years how many more parkland, your department had acquired and parks? Because, you're requesting another position, and I would like to know, we know that the city has grown, and in the last 5 years, we got a lot of parkland and new parks, and, and what are, how do you make the case that we really need this person? Because can you provide us with that information to determine, you know?
Yep, and actually, thank you, Misty. She went to page 159, which the justification for the additional park maintenance worker. To your point, Julia, in 2010, we had 527 acres, and today we have 729. We've got, a new dog park, splash pad, shelter, bathroom facility at Hugo Jamestown, playground and half basketball court at King James Way, shelter at Kids Crossing, several new paths, along with, our new developments, Corey Vista, Uptown, North Park, Stoner Prairie, Fahey Field, Terravessa. And then if you look at the bottom paragraph there, we did have 7.6 full-time park workers in 2010, and we've got 7.9 today. And then actually our urban forestry staff has been reduced from 2008. So that kind of gives a bit of just capacity justification for an additional park maintenance worker. But certainly, we're thankful for the additional park and public works worker that the mayor has included in the budget. But certainly, you can see that our capacity within the, our holdings within the Parks Department is continuing to grow, but I will tell you that they get their work done, but at some point in time, something's got to give. So I guess that's just a brief explanation of the growth of the department.
Go ahead with your follow-up.
So this is a follow-up. So do you know how many parkland we are getting with the town of Madison or parks?
What's that, Julia?
Town of Madison, do you know what is the inventory regarding parks or parkland?
Yep. We're going to end up with one large park with, I think it's about 6.5 acres. And it does, and certainly we've got sidewalks to plow and ash trees to treat and those kinds of things. So it will, like I say, we're thankful for that additional position, and our holdings will increase a bit when we do receive the town of Madison.
Another question? We'll move to Gabriella since she had a question, and then we'll come back to you, Julia.
Thank you. So, Scott, I'm looking at page 153 of your budget, of the whole budget document, sorry, but page 153. And I'm seeing line item 325 and then line item 340. I'm curious about the pesticide and the weed control that we do in the city, and what type of chemicals are we using? Are we using any sort of, I'm curious about the environmental impact of the weed killers and the pesticides that we choose to use. And if you can either tell us about that or maybe provide some information in the near future about that.
Certainly. And we, in regards to we do broadleaf applications in some of our high use areas along with our athletic fields. We do use Roundup as a, maintenance item and fence lines and those kinds of things. But yeah, I could, if you're looking for MSDS sheets and those kinds of things, I can certainly provide those for you.
I'd be curious. And I also just kind of wondering if we've ever done any sort of analysis about the environmental impact of the products that we're choosing. Is there some thought put into what the impact of that, or has that been done in the past? Is that planned for in the future? Or do we just kind of go through and use the same products year over year?
We tend to use the same products year after year. Certainly we're open to the idea of different chemicals and to be honest, we really don't use that much, Gabriella. We do, in the interest of safety, try to keep the athletic field stands of turf as healthy as we can. And like I say, we use a broadleaf to keep the dandelions down, and we may use a little bit of a fertilizer to give it, to give the turf a boost. But certainly we use I know they use preen in the, in the flower or in the, in the medians and the landscaped areas to keep the weed growth down. And we do use Roundup in our fence lines and those kinds of things.
Great. That's very helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Julia, you had a question?
Yes, on page 155, so you mentioned that $90,000 from the Magog Park Improvement Plan. What are you planning to do with that in the park?
That's we're going to be doing the, as I mentioned, the east-west path that goes from McGaw to Fahey Fields adjacent to the pickleball courts. We're going to put some path lighting there. And we're also going to install a playground as part of the plan, which is to the west end of the area, close to the Fahey Field development. So that'll be their neighborhood park. And then the mayor did include in his budget a drinking fountain for the pickleball courts.
Sure, go ahead.
So have you considered with the, the water fountain, like what happened in McGee Park, that there was a group of, I think there was the Lion Club that they donated. Have you considered looking for donation to add all this amenity? Because we are using Park Improvement Fund for Quarry Ridge Retirement Community. That one is the one behind Target?
I have not, but certainly I know in working with the area pickleball group, we're looking at some partnership and potential donations to improve the facility at the pickleball courts. But specifically no, I didn't seek any donations for the drinking fountain. That's for sure.
I can speak to your kind of other part of that question, which is why that particular development. So the $5,000 for the water fountain is a new amenity, and it's being done at a community park. So when we were looking at what kind of pot of money to pull that from, I looked at the most restrictive funding that we received the longest time ago, because there's time constraints on there, that isn't already planned for another park. So for example, Terra Vesa, I think we may have collected earlier, but there's going to be a park in Terra Vesa. So that money is kind of already planned for that park. As far as I'm aware, there isn't anything in this exact area being planned by that development. So I thought it would be a really good match for this community park amenity.
Your mic's off.
It can be used for the inclusive playground in the McKeefen Park.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, additional questions? Hearing none, I want to thank you, Scott, for your presentation this evening for the
Thank you.
Parks and Recreation. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Randy, if I may.
Yes.
So our next presenter doesn't appear to be online yet, but if we could jump to Matt Pro, which is the IT department at the end of the night, I think that would be a great next move.
Sure, no, I absolutely agree.
Do you need a motion or?
No, we
No,
don't need a
we
motion.
wait on this. We'll jump down to information and technology. Matt, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you. Good evening, everyone. So just to start with a few of our significant accomplishments this year, we moved to a cloud fax service for all of our fax machines. We've got 13 of those throughout the city. We have replaced the city firewalls, which was a very large project that we don't do very often. We are working on refreshing the city website. We expect that the refresh to be online by the end of the year. We replaced a couple of large multifunction copier printer devices in police and the senior center. We assisted with an installation of a Zoom room or a virtual meeting system in the police conference room. We implemented or are implementing multi-factor authentication for our email and our Office 365 environment to provide some additional security for that platform. We are going to implement self-service password reset by the end of the year, which is a really great addition because we have a lot of staff who work 24 hours a day, but we don't have IT staff working 24 hours a day. So this will allow staff to be able to reset their own passwords and get back into the system when they're locked out. And on the MPSIS side, we had a major migration where we moved the Trax environment to web services for all of our 5 locations. Trax is the system they use to write citations, warnings, and crash reports. And then we are working on a web statistical portal for all 5 sites that will eventually be available online for the public to view. New initiatives for the coming year. We are hoping to be able to hire, onboard and train a new GIS coordinator, which I'll talk about in a little bit. We're replacing some significant infrastructure in our City Hall building. We're replacing the network switches that connect all of our devices together. We are going to be in the planning process for the next evolution of our backup systems. So today we have our primary systems are at the One Neck Data Center. Our backup systems are in the City Hall building. So in 2022, most of the backup equipment will be going end of life. We're going to be planning for the replacement of that in early 2023. We're going to assist FACT with a significant network replacement project. They're going to network all of their equipment together over the next probably year and a half. We're going to assist them with that. We're replacing some major systems on the MPSIS side in the next year, the LPR systems and also their dispatch workstations. So Misty, if you could, thank you. So some significant budget changes. So the first item there, when we purchase significant equipment like our data storage, our servers, things of that nature, generally speaking, we purchase 3 years of maintenance and support. But whenever possible, if that equipment has useful life left in it, we want to extend that. And so rather than replace that equipment, we will extend the maintenance contracts associated with it. And so in this case, we have equipment coming up on its 3-year lifespan here at the end of, or in the middle of 2022. And so we're going to need to extend support on that, that equipment. The NAS support is our backup storage infrastructure. So where all our backups are written. The VX Rail support and vSAN support, that's where all of our servers are running. That's our virtual server system. That second bullet point item in the 2021 budget, we deferred the replacement of half of the police laptops in all their squad cars. So we are going to be replacing those, half of them in 21, the other half in 22. So we restored that funding for 22. That third bullet point is to add a component to our website to provide ADA compliance. That piece of software bolts onto our existing website and allows staff to understand and be notified when they place content on our website that is not ADA compliant, that's difficult for someone to be able to read or understand. And so that is going to be part of the refresh process that we're going through here over the next couple of months. That next bullet point item is a request for a new email archiving and protection system. This system does a couple of different things. Number one, it attempts to intercept all of the phishing emails that we've been receiving over the last couple of years. Most of you, I'm sure, have seen them. It's become a real significant problem. This system is able to intercept a vast majority of those things. And it just so happens the system also has a much better archiving tool for email, which we use very often when we get open records requests. So that system will actually have two different purposes for us. Added into the budget for 22 is money for internet access for the hub phase 1. That plan or that project includes public access or public Wi-Fi access throughout that entire complex. So I had to add services in for 22 for that complex. That will be, based on the current plan, that will be able to be used if and when the phase 2 project goes forward. So we won't have the same charge again. The idea is we'll link the phase 1 and phase 2 together via cabling running in conduit across the street. And then that next one, we had departments add some cell phones. So the police department and the utility added some cell phones in 21 that we need to fund in 22. And then the final item is the GIS coordinator position, which I'll talk about next. So the idea behind the GIS coordinator position, if you're not familiar with GIS, it is our electronic mapping tool. Geographic Information System is really what GIS stands for. It's used in a variety of departments for a number of different things. Our largest user is Public Works and Utility. They manage all of the streets, all of the water infrastructure, the sewer infrastructure, all the various components that Public Works manages is done through GIS. In addition to that, it's used in planning and zoning for a variety of different purposes, in police and fire for a variety of different purposes. And the concern we have is a couple of things. Number one, we can't have an expert in GIS because all of this workload is spread across a variety of different departments. We don't have any coordinated or consolidated effort to build a GIS system that is beneficial and efficient for the city, and also take the workload off of some of those departments and some of the staff in those departments to allow them to focus on the job that they're hired to do. And then the longer term, larger scale purpose of this is for someone to come in and build a GIS system that can be beneficial to the entire organization and also to the public, so that we can put all of this information that we gather in this system to good use and to provide that information to our departments and to the public. And finally, as the mayor alluded to initially, we also have some significant challenges coming up with some mandated requirements to change our data, to change our projection systems. And we're going to need to solve that issue. So in the short term, the first phase of this position will be to handle those immediate needs before pivoting to the bigger, the longer scale. And I think that's everything for my budget.
Very good. Thank you very much. I will open up to questions from council. Gabriella, you're first.
Thanks. Thanks, Matt. I just wanted to say I think the GIS position is great. My background is in geology, so have a lot of friends that went to GIS careers, and incredibly valuable. And I think it will take some items off the plate of some of our staff that could be dedicating into something that's more akin to their specialty rather than doing the GIS work that can be done by a specialist. One of my questions for that one, though, and maybe this is something we can discuss with personnel, but are we considering remote workers for that? Because I imagine that would be primarily online, and I wonder if that would open up us to a different pool of people that are outside the Madison area.
So I do think that's a good conversation to have. Probably relevant to this position and to some other positions in the city. And you're absolutely right. I mean, if we can open up a larger pool of candidates, that would be fantastic. I guess my one concern with that, though, is particularly related to some of these upcoming projects. This position may need to be in the field for a period of time, collecting information. We're concerned about the information that may or may not be available to us from the town of Madison. And we may have to essentially create some of that data on our own. And so this position could be out in the field for a while, collecting geographic points for the infrastructure and the assets that we are absorbing for the town of Madison. But it's absolutely worth a conversation. And I agree with you, not just with this position, but some other positions as well.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Julia, you have the floor.
Hi, Matt. One question is, I know that you're adding more money, $26,000 for this email archiving and protection. Is this software will also prevent us from cyber attack, because I am concerned about, how the city is well prepared for all of this cyber attack. More and more small municipalities are being attacked every day. So, and can you explain a little bit more how we are well prepared, and if all this investment that you are doing is part of your plan to prevent all of that?
No, absolutely. So we know that the most likely scenario, if we encounter some sort of security issue or breach, is it's going to come through email. It's going to come through email with a bad link or a bad attachment. And so we're doing a couple of things to combat that. One of those things is the multi-factor authentication in our Office 365 environment, making sure that your email is protected by more than just a password. And that was an initiative in the 2021 budget. So the initiative in 2022 now is to add an extra layer of protection, which is to place a security device in front of our email. So every single email sent to or from any city account will first flow through this device. And its primary job is to identify potential threats and quarantine or remove them before they ever get to city staff. Right now, you've all seen the phishing emails that we get fairly often. We are right now reliant on staff to do the right thing, to identify an email that looks suspicious and to not click on anything and to delete it without doing anything else. As great a job as they've done, we'd prefer that those emails never land in their inboxes, and that's the intent of this system. The archiving piece of it is a bonus, quite honestly. It's that security layer, and I can tell you, when I've looked at a couple of different products, we're kind of focused in on one in particular. They actually did a scan through some of our mailboxes and identified some of these phishing emails that have landed in our inboxes. So we know that this is going to be effective, and it's going to keep those threats out of the mailboxes, which is the goal with this thing.
Additional questions? Hearing none, thank you very much, Matt, for your presentation this evening.
Thank you.
So Chair, I would suggest moving to finance next then.
That we will. You have the floor, Misty.
Excellent. So a lot of what you heard from other departments today, 2020 and 2021, was pretty tumultuous for the finance department, and major kudos to the team for getting through all of it with really no interruption in the service that we provide. We also, in 2021, had a retirement of a very long-term employee. So we replaced that employee, trained the replacement, and got things back up and running really quick. But that was a really unusual item, having to replace that knowledge. Also similar to how Mike mentioned, so the acting city administrator role was completed in 2021. We do have union negotiations that we're working on currently with both police and fire represented staff. We revised the purchasing policy ordinances, which clarified certain items and then aligned with current procedures and also streamlined certain procedures. And I'll say thank you to the council for approving those streamlined processes. I have heard from multiple departments that have said that they appreciated that additional flexibility and some of that clerical work that was not providing a lot of value that they were able to take off their plate. So thank you for being open to that change. We did do the 5-year arbitrage reports for 2016, which demonstrated IRS compliance. We evaluated the stormwater utility rates to make sure that we were covering our costs. We implemented ACH blocks and filters, which helped fraud protection from the city's bank account not getting debited on an unauthorized manner. In December, we plan to prepay the last piece of our TID 4 debt. It'll save us about $300,000 in interest cost. That's 6 years early. And then the ARPA funding has been a project, trying to keep up on what the grant requirements are, the required reporting, and then how we want to spend that money. New initiatives for 2022 is to continue looking at that ARPA, work with you as the council and what the spending plan will be for that funding. We'd like to look at the senior center. They have a decentralized cash process. So we have money that was actually carried over from last year to have our external auditors come in and do an internal control review of that process to make sure it's really just as tight as it can be. I really like to do one of those each year, but so far that funding has not been provided. But at least we can get the senior center done. And then we've done recreation and we've done municipal court as well. Similar to that ARPA spending plan, we'd like to prepare a TID closure financial plan for council approval. We do expect to close TID 6, which is the one over by Target, the Orchard Point TID. Expect to close that in 2022. Hopefully, we'll see kind of where things shake out between now and then, but that's the hope, which would require a final audit, resolutions, keeping it open for that extra year for the Affordable Housing Fund. All of that will need to get organized and completed. We do have more 5-year arbitrage reports for 2017 we'll have to do next year. And then a big piece with this ARPA funding is we will very likely have to do a single audit, which is something that the city hasn't had to do before. We have always complied with the requirements, but we haven't had to prove it before. So it's extra steps that we will have to do, extra documentation and extra work with the auditors. So then looking at the significant changes, the first one is that single audit. So it used to be $5,000. Based on our current quote, it's $9,000. From what I've heard from all of the firms, the cost has been going up because everybody needs one. So it's harder to find a firm that can actually provide that service, but it is required in order to keep that ARPA funding. Similar to how Jill in the Senior Center mentioned the language line translation services that the Senior Center is using, included a small amount of money for finance to use that too, with our utility billing, our property tax customers, making sure that we have the tools available to communicate clearly with our customers. It's a relatively small dollar amount, but I think it's an important policy thing to point out. We also included $600 for a CPFO certification test and materials. So our new employee is very ambitious, wants to be a finance director someday, which just makes my heart sing. One of the things that we can do to help him get ready for that is to give him opportunities for training and the CPFO certification, which is a certification I hold, but it will help the city as well as he learns these additional things. We can work it with projects that we want to do in the finance department to make us better. So yes, it will be development in him, but it will really help the city and the finance department as well for a relatively low cost. Reinstated the out-of-state travel, similar to other budgets. Included some additional funds for the town of Madison with the tax bills that we'll have to issue, the increase in dog licenses, etc. In my budget is more than just the finance department. It's a variety of other pieces. So there's some significant changes for those as well. So the employee retirement payouts decreased from $142,000 to $100,000 based on the current retirees that we're expecting, though that is paid for by assigned fund balance, not property taxes. That prepaying of the TID the last piece is prepaid in 2022, which will be 3 years early for a $10,000 savings in interest cost. On the revenue side, our general transportation aid, which is money we receive from the state to fund our roads and a piece of the police department that serves the roads, that formula is based on our costs over 6-year average. Our 6-year average costs have been increasing. I'm sure you've noticed all the different road projects we're doing right now, but there is a cap in how much we're allowed to increase in 1 year. So we will hit that cap, which is a 15% increase and $237,000 more in aid that we're going to get. It was a big part of why, a lot of additional proposals were able to be included. One interesting piece we learned recently is with the town of Madison absorption. One of the aids that we receive is the shared revenue, which is aid we get from the state as well. That money is paid out 15% earlier in the year and then 85% in November. That 85% in November, the town's not going to exist. So working with the City of Madison and the Department of Revenue, figuring out how that will be allocated between both the City of Madison and the City of Fitchburg. So that $156,000 is money that we expect to get from that aid payment. And then I did confirm with the Department of Revenue that that same amount plus that other piece of the earlier payment is expected for years going forward. So that was some good news as well this year. On the bad news side, interest rates obviously have plummeted this year. City is not immune to that, so all of our investments that we have, the interest rates are significantly less than what they've been in the past. So it's decreasing from $150,000 to $100,000. And then our liability and premium insurance have increased pretty significantly, just the rates that are being charged. And then also in the insurance side, so we are more or less self-funded, or at least partially self-funded, which we have had a lot of claims filed against us recently. And so that self-insured piece, I increased that from $75,000 to $90,000 based on our actual claims history recently. I don't have any new proposals in the finance department, but I would like to, I guess, advocate for the clerical float position that you'll hear about tomorrow. I think that will really help the finance department, budget time, tax time, utility billing time, all of those. And then there's also a part-time position in the Human Resources Department that you'll hear about tomorrow, which would have helped payroll functions. Is not currently included in the mayor's budget, but I think that that would be a really great position to help support the finance department there too. Payroll is very complex, and right now we really have one person that does it. We do have a backup person, but is something that we could use some additional help with the amount of staff that we are supporting. That is it.
Very good. I do have one question back up under the initiatives for 2022. You mentioned the single audit. Is that a federal state requirement? Is it, or is it just a best practice? Is it?
It's a federal requirement. So
Federal
if we
requirement.
receive $750,000 worth of federal money that we spend, we have to do a single audit, a federal single audit. And then if we have to do a federal single audit, we also have to do a state single audit.
Okay.
So it is a requirement.
It is a requirement.
A lot of people are getting this money, so
Yep.
everyone has to do one. Most of the people are, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
You don't want to turn away $3.2 million though, because you have to spend $9 million on a single audit.
No, I just
Yep,
was
but it is required.
curious as to the process, that's all.
we cannot pay with the ARPA funds the audit, isn't it?
So we can.
Oh,
So
okay.
part of that spending plan is going to be about whether or not there's administrative costs that we charge to that. But that's to be determined, I would say, from the council.
Okay. You have another
Couple of questions.
follow-up
Yeah,
question? Go
I
ahead.
have a couple of questions. You mentioned payroll. Have you considered outsource the payroll instead of doing in-house?
So we do already outsource a decent part of it.
Okay.
So the payroll person in my team is responsible for reviewing the time,
okay.
making sure it complies with the city policies, with the rules, and then that data is shared with the software provider, and then they do the actual printing of the checks or the running of the check roll and the reporting and all of that. So we are kind of a hybrid system at that point. But I think we do need to have somebody on staff that knows our policies, make sure that that time is correct before we pass it on.
What provider is?
So we use Paylocity.
Oh, Pelosi, yeah. Have another question? I don't know.
Go
if
ahead.
Jim, you have a question, Jim? No? Okay. So you're mentioning your initiative in 2022 that is the closure of the TID number 6, okay? And then you are going to use part of that strategy that you have at the beginning of, you mentioned is to use part of that. When you close that TID, use some of the funding there to fund the deficit that we are going to have in 2022. Like we are going to be borrowing from that TID, isn't it? Something like that?
I'd like to back up for a moment quick. So when we close the TID, there's basically two funding sources that we will get. One is because the TID has been successful and healthy, there'll be a balance left there that we will take our piece of it and then share it with the other jurisdictions. So the school district will get about half, we'll get about our third. So that money we will receive, that'll be best used on kind of one-time projects. And that's not really identified in here at this point. The other thing that we're going to get when we close the TID is a levy limit adjustment. That's the piece that we're proposing that we use a strategy to use that levy limit adjustment a year early. It is technically a structural deficit. However, because we know that it'll come online the next year, we're pretty confident in that. I feel comfortable explaining that to the public and to Moody's and to everybody about why this is a unique situation and why we can make some of those more creative solutions to get the job done.
And the levy tax adjustment is going to be the amount that you are trying to transfer is in the spreadsheet?
Yep, so this is that levy limit calculation page, and that's the green section here.
Okay,
So the town.
Which page is 17?
It's page 17. I can make this a little bigger too. So the town annexation, the levy limit we receive is based on the property taxes that those properties pay to the town. So this number is an approximation. It's based on what the last tax bills were. We'll kind of narrow that down more as we go. And then the TID closure is based on a formula as well. So this is also a best guess at this point, but I think we'll get about $409,000 from that TID 6 closure as a levy limit adjustment.
Okay. Can I continue because I am not quite there yet?
Sure,
Okay.
go ahead.
Okay, so the other thing that we discussed as council is that to keep, those TID open for another year to use the increment to fund the housing fund. Will we be able to do this if we close it next year?
Yes, so I have built into my projections that we will use cash to pay that extra year of increment and still be able to close in the same year. And I have vetted that strategy with Ellers, so it is something we'll be able to do. So we're going to technically close it, do the extension, then close it shortly after. Still has to be in 2 steps, but they will both be done in a relatively short amount of time.
Okay,
We'll still get the same end result.
Can you repeat because I don't understand? Can you explain me?
Yep, so whenever we close a TID,
Yeah.
you have to pass a resolution closing it. So the first step is council will have to pass a resolution extending the life of the TID for the affordable housing. And we'll probably do that, my guess is in first quarter of 2022.
Okay.
That year of increment that will divert to the affordable housing fund, we already kind of have that in the bank for the TIDs concerned. So I already have that money that we can use to meet the goals of that closure or of that extension. Then shortly thereafter, probably still in the first quarter of 2022, maybe early April, has to be done by April 15th. Then council will pass a resolution that officially closes the TID. So we are able to do both. They'll just both happen in a very short amount of time.
Okay. Can I continue?
You may, go ahead.
Okay. So how much is going to be that increment that you're going to put aside?
The 1 year of affordable housing? I do not recall that number off the top of my head. I can get it to you.
Okay.
But it will be based on whatever that last year is when the time comes.
Okay.
So I can get you what last year's one, which will be a reasonable ballpark, but it won't be the exact.
Okay. And I have more. Okay, sorry. So and then you mentioned that we can use that TID tax adjustment for one time and one project. So this is how we are going to use that to fund the deficit that we have.
So the surplus that the TID has, that should be used on one-time projects. And that we haven't designated specifically how we plan to use that yet. The levy limit adjustment is something that we'll get basically year after year. So that's something that you could use for ongoing capital and ongoing operating. And we are proposing to use a strategy to spend that, to basically account for that strategy with the 2022 budget, even though we actually won't get the adjustment until 2023's budget because of timing.
So when you say we don't know how to use that money, who are the we?
So included in my 2022 initiatives was a TID closure plan.
Yeah.
So that will be council.
Council.
So I suspect that we will do it through the CIP process, is my guess, or as a part of the ARPA funding plan. So still some details to be worked out as far as how that will be done, but it's very much so council driven.
Can I ask a follow-up question? So, so the strategy to use those adjustment and fund only for one-time project. You don't want to use it for recurrent project.
The levy limit adjustment we can use for recurring.
Oh, really?
Yep. So we are using a one-time strategy to spend it the year early, but once that adjustment comes on the books in 2023, we'll have it every year after. So we can use it for recurring things.
So my question to you is why we are not using, because I think we have an extra bucket there of money, a cushion there that we don't know how to use it yet. So why don't we use that money to fund some of the additional positions that we have in the budget that were not approved? You know what I mean? Why we are not using, why we don't extend that strategy to fund additional positions? You know what I mean?
So that strategy is something that we will get year after year and can use it for recurring costs. And that is a big piece of how all of the positions that are funded were able to be funded. That surplus that we're going to get really is just a one-time check that I will write to ourselves. At the same time, I'll write one to the school and I'll write one to the county, et cetera. That money, because it's a one-time source of funds, really should be used on one-time projects. And I believe part of what the mayor's intention with his letter was that there are some projects he removed that were one-time projects. So the sustainability plan is coming to mind, some other ones as well. Those could possibly be funded through that TID closure surplus funding. So we do have a lot of, I'd say, one-time funding coming our way in the very near future between the TID closure and then the ARPA funding. We just need to make sure that the one-time funding is spent on one-time things and we save the ongoing costs to be funded by ongoing sources.
Okay, I have another. Can I ask? Huh? We don't know. So
No, go ahead.
Okay. So the other thing is we have the TID in the town of Madison.
Correct.
So the idea was, or before the talk was that when we, we are going to close that TID when we get the town. So what is the plan for that?
So we do have an outstanding obligation there.
Okay.
So the council approved of a development agreement with, I believe it's 2500 Rimrock. I'm looking at Chad as though he knows, but I think that's the road,
It'd
the
be
project.
Artisan Village is what
No,
you're referring
it's
to?
not that one.
The innovation. Is another innovation?
Oh, that's right.
The older one. So I wasn't here at the time either. I think it's a mixed-use building over Innovation Campus.
Okay.
The council passed an agreement where the town TID was going to make payments to that project, and then once it came over to the city would continue to make payments on that same project. So we do have an outstanding obligation to at least one development that we have to make sure is covered. There are some moving pieces with that, I'll say, but the plan is to close that TID as soon as possible. I just don't know if it will be immediately.
So how much is that outstanding obligation? It's like a huge amount?
I don't recall that either, but I can get that to you for sure.
I have another question.
Go ahead.
Do you have the list of all the unused fund to carry forward to 2022 from 2021?
The carryover request?
Yeah.
So we won't do that yet. So that comes in March. So department heads submit to me their requests in February. I put together the resolution for your guys' action that first meeting in March. But I'll say one of the strategies that we did do for the 2022 budget is the same strategy we do every year, where we look at if there's any one-time kind of requests for 2022, and if there's any, I guess, unexpected unspent funding in 2021, that we would propose a budget amendment to pay for those things in 2021 rather than budgeting for them in 2022. So that is an exercise that we went through. I expect council will see at least one pretty large one in the police department in coming meetings where we tried to use that strategy.
I have another one, but I don't know if people has.
Gabrielle or Joe, do you have a question? Otherwise, Julia will continue.
Oh, okay. So This budget is coming with a 3% increase, okay? So what is the ceiling for the increase? Is it 3% or we have room to increase a little bit more?
So the 3% you're talking about is on the average home. The actual total amount of property taxes we're going to collect is a much larger increase than that, but the 3% is that average home. And because we were a maintenance assessment year, it's pretty easy to compare one year to the next. As far as how much we can increase that more, that's where the levy limits come into play. So using that strategy that we talked about to use those other two levy limit adjustments we know we're going to get, hopefully in the 2023 budget, less the amount that we're technically over now, there's about $12,000 there of capacity.
Okay.
So if you...
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
It's on page, it's the difference between the 772 and the 785.
Exactly. Yep, page 17.
Okay. Yes, you reserve your right. Yeah, yeah. Sure. Yeah. Any other questions from council? Since we do not have Bill?
So we do not. So I would encourage you to still recess the meeting at this point. We will tackle Public Works. I guess my suggestion would be at the end of tomorrow, since Public Works tends to be a longer one, and I will make sure to coordinate with the director and be sure we're on the same page.
Okay, very good. Is there a motion to recess until tomorrow, Wednesday, October 6, 2021 at 6 p.m.?
So moved.
Second? Do I hear a second?
We don't need a second. It's Finance Committee
Finance.
only.
Very good. You reminded me. Yes. And Finance is the only one that can vote on this.
Correct.
All right. Discussion? Hearing none. Those in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries. We are recessed at 8:34 p.m.